Hi, I'm Diana, the artist behind My McDoodles. Welcome to my channel. Hi, welcome back. Today we'll be doing a fun little Valentine's or like love note kind of project. We're going to make a 3D looking envelope with a love note sticking out and with some other fun items like gold paper clips and things mixed in. This will be perfect for a Valentine's Day card or an e-card. Or you could even make a GIF out of it if you'd like to send it to somebody to just put a smile on their face for Valentine's Day or any day. So first we're going to make a 3D looking envelope. So I created a document that's the same size as my screen here, and in my first layer I'm going to make my envelope. I grabbed this pink color here and I'll use the select tool with rectangle turned on and color fill turned on. And just draw a rectangle that it'll automatically fill with the color. Next we need some flaps. So I'll make a new layer and I'm going to draw a triangle this time and then fill it with the color, and that will be the top flap. It'll be an open envelope from the back. So I have a monoline brush selected. It's in the calligraphy section of the brush library. It's free with Procreate. And I'll draw a triangle to the best of my ability. Then I'm going to use the assist tool that helps you draw like quick shapes to make the triangle look more perfect. Okay, so it knows I was trying to draw a triangle. There's these other options too, like a quadrilateral, which it'll let you like adjust these nodes. I'm going to go with triangle here. This doesn't completely line up, but we can fill that in later. And it looks like it's made it symmetrical and everything. So I'm just gonna try to meet it up with my envelope here the best I can. And my monoline brush was like kind of thick, so I don't have like a skinny nice line to work with where this node is right on the edge. It's in the center of my stroke. I probably should have made the brush a little bit thinner to draw like a more precise line, but I don't really mind. I like my artwork to kind of be like loose and a little bit like wonky and whimsical anyway, but it depends on your style. You could always just adjust this down so you have a more precise line. Oops. So I have this little gap here though, so I'm just gonna fill that in a bit. Okay, and that'll be the top flap of my envelope, and we'll just drop the color in. So far we have the top and then the bottom. I'm just going to rename these as I go to keep organized. Okay, and then we need like a flap that comes up from the bottom and then the two sides that are folded in. I'll do the sides first, and then I want my bottom flap to go at the very top. So I'll make a new layer. Let's put it above the flap. And then I'm going to use a different color just so I can see what I'm doing. We can always come back in and recolor things so the envelope looks right. So just grab a little bit of a darker reddish color, and then we're going to draw a triangle this way. Let's see if we can use this one. Depends on the dimensions if it'll work out or not. So I duplicated my top flap and I'm going to rotate it 45 degrees twice to get it rotated 90. And then, well, we could probably just resize it so you don't have to draw it again. So I have my flap duplicated, and then see how it's sticking up here? I need to push freeform and then just slide this node down until it meets right at the corner here, like that. Just kind of nudge it into place. Okay, so let's see how that looks. I do still need to make it a different color so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, that's not bad. I'm going to go with that so we don't have to redraw it. So I'll duplicate that again since now I know it's the right size. And then this time it's much easier. You just simply press flip horizontal, turn on your magnetics. I'm going to make sure uniform's selected just so there's no shenanigans here. And then just slide it over until it meets up with the edge. on this side. Okay, so we have our two flaps, and now we need the bottom one. So I'm going to duplicate this top flap again and see if I can just fill it in there for the bottom flap. Scooch it all the way to the top after I duplicate it. I'm going to make it a different color again just so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, and make sure you have the correct one selected. And then I'm just going to scoot it down. I still have magnetics turned on, which will slide it straight down. Okay, that looks good. And of course, I don't really like that point, so we're just going to take that off once we have it all lined up. Okay, I like that. I'm going to go back up here to the select tool and choose rectangle, turn color fill back off, and then I'm just going to select this little bit here that's kind of like sticking up and looks weird, and I just lined up my rectangle with as close as I can with the place where it meets those two, and then just cut it out of your picture there. Make sure you're on the right layer, and then just swipe 3 fingers down and press cut. You can see it doesn't line up perfectly. I'm okay with that because I mean, in real life it might not either. Maybe I will round it off a little bit, kind of mess around with it to get it the shape that I want. So just do that and then be back in a sec. Okay, so I like that shape, but now I have these sides that are sticking out. That's okay. I am going to go to the flap on this side, hold 2 fingers down to select that triangle, press invert, and that will select everything besides that triangle. And I'm just going to erase that little bit out. And I'd like to erase it out of my flap layer, so make sure you select that and that you're working in the correct layer. Okay, and I'll do the same thing for the other side. So select, invert, go back up to my flap layer, and then grab my eraser tool. Okay, so I have my envelope set up. I'm going to change the colors a little bit so that it doesn't look like this. I think I'll make it this light pink color, and then the inside can be this like darker pink, or maybe something in between. So I'll just recolor mine the way I want it. Recolor yours the way you like it. I like to drop color in a layer directly above and then use a clipping mask to recolor my items. So it's going to look something like that, and there'll be some shadows here. It does get tricky to see what you're working on when it's all the same color. Maybe I should have done my shadows first, but anyway. Let's do the shadow for these flaps first. So we'll go ahead and duplicate it. I'm going to put the duplicate in the back. It doesn't really matter, but they do lose quality when you duplicate them. So I'm going to use my duplicate for my shadow rather than my nice crisp one. So I have the duplicate behind the original flap, and I'm going to color it like a darker color. It could be black or maybe just like a really dark red. And you can use the recolor tool or the color drop, whichever works for you. And you can see it's turned this dark color, and then we're going to apply a Gaussian blur to make it look like a shadow. So let's turn this one back on so we can see how much shadow. And it's going to spill out the sides, but don't worry about that for now. So you select your layer and then go up here to this magic wand and then push Gaussian blur and do it for, well, you could do it with the pencil actually. That'll prevent it from like spilling out so much on the side. So push pencil, and I don't want 60% blur. I usually do like 1 or 2% or even less. So I'm going to do like 1.7 it says. And then just swipe over this area here. Okay, we need more in this case. So I'm going to turn it up to, mine's at 35-ish. And that looks kind of nice for an envelope. It looks like a real shadow. And then just kind of like paint your shadow in here, keeping away from the edge. And you can do it as a whole layer as well and apply your blur, but then you'll have like the shadow pouring out the side. So you'll have to erase it back out, which isn't like a huge deal, but it is nice they added this option where you could just do a selected area in Procreate 5X. Okay, so I like that shadow. You could just duplicate it and flip it. I think I might want more control over it. So I think I'll just do the same process for this flap over here. Okay, so I like that amount of shadow, and then we need to add a shadow behind this flap. It's gonna have more shadow here and like less on the sides. So let's see how we can do that. Okay, so for the top, it's at 60%. Around 60%, and you can paint it in, and if you make a mistake you can also grab like the eraser tool and erase it back out while it's selected for blur. And then I want to make less blur on the side, so I'm going to deselect it and then just push the Gaussian blur again and choose my pencil and then just make it like much less for these flaps here. So just a little bit goes a long way for those. Okay, so now I have my envelope set up and it looks pretty good. Maybe you want to make a crease here to make it look like it's been like folded and then opened. So I'll just go to that flap, and I've grouped all of my flaps into their own little like folders so I can keep track of the left plus its shadow, the right plus its shadow, and then that flap that goes up. So I'll make a new layer on top of this flap this time. And then we're just going to draw a line across. I'm going to stick with this monoline, but make it like itty bitty. It's at 1%. And then just make a line straight across. So if I start here and I draw my line across, before you lift your pencil, just keep it held down. It'll make a straight line, but it might not be necessarily perfectly horizontal. But if you press your finger on the screen, it will be. So then I have my little line there, but that's obviously like a really hard line. So I also want to blur that out a little bit. So make sure that the line is selected, go back up to that Gaussian blur, and this time I'm just going to choose layer and then just slide it just a little bit just to kind of soften it up a little bit there and make it less obvious. So just like mine's at 2%, and then I'll just take the opacity down as well. And that looks pretty good. That's at like 40%-ish. So I like how my envelope looks, and now we're going to put a little note inside. I've preserved all the layers of my envelope here so I can recolor it and stuff without losing the shadow. So you can use this for different projects and different like holidays and stuff, so it's not always pink. So I'm going to save mine in groups like this. I'm going to keep this as a template and just duplicate my whole document to work with this envelope to make it a Valentine's Day themed love note. So I went back out to my gallery here, and then let's just name this envelope template. I like to keep things a little bit organized here the best as I can. It gets overwhelming when there's so much artwork in here. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate it, and now I'm going to use this for my Valentine. Okay, so I got my cute little envelope. I'm going to group up my envelope into another folder just to keep it nice and clean over here in the layers menu. Okay, and then we're going to slip a note inside. So for now, I'm just going to make my note in a fresh layer that's over top of the entire thing. But we can always slip it behind these flaps here once we have it finished. but just so that I can keep things nice and clean over here and keep organized and see what I'm doing, I'm just going to make it in the very top. So I'm going to grab like an off-white kind of color, be like a little bit grayish, and then make a rectangle. The same method we did for the envelope. So choose the select tool, rectangle, color fill is on, and then just make like a little note that looks like it would fit inside of your envelope, like in real life. And then it gets filled. And then let's put like, I don't know, some little hearts on it, and maybe it says I love you. So a new layer on the top. I'm going to grab a dark red color and a calligraphy brush. There's several here in the calligraphy section of the brush library. So you could grab one of these that's included. I have a few that are my favorites, and I'll share the link to the artist that makes them, and she has them in her Etsy shop. They're really cute. It's by Creately. She's on Instagram and Etsy, and I'll share her info in the description of this video. I like the oval monoline brush that she's created, so I'm going to go with that and just write I love you on this little note. I need a drawing guide because I can't write in a straight line. So I'm going to go up to my canvas and turn on drawing guide and put a grid over top of this, just so I can see what I'm doing. And I like to write larger than I expect the finished artwork to be, because you can always shrink it down, but you can't make it larger. So for now, the writing does not have to fit on the note. Just write it out so that it looks nice, and then we'll shrink it down to fit on the note. Okay, I'm obviously not a hand letterer, but that's the best that I've got. There's some really nice courses on hand lettering from everytuesday.com. You can go to her website and she has courses she shares, and there's also a lot of free videos on lettering. And the store where I got these brushes, Creately, she also has a lettering workbook that's really cute. I got it and it's a lot of fun, and it's nice to have like a guide to kind of like learn the strokes and practice a little bit, and it was really reasonably priced, so check her out. Okay, so I have my words. I'm going to shrink it down. Actually, I'm going to duplicate it just in case. I never like to work with my original. Get rid of this grid because it's super distracting. And then just shrink it down on uniform here. Okay, and I'm trying to keep in mind that this is going to be sticking out of the envelope, so I want my words to show. So I'm going to kind of keep it towards the top. Okay, like that. And then I'll just put like some little hearts and some like extra little stuff. Okay, so I have all my items arranged pretty well, the way I like it. And the last thing is, maybe I should just sign my name there. Okay, so I'm not too concerned if some of these things get cut off when it's put into the envelope. It's okay. It's supposed to look like it's real, so it's fine if some of it's cut off or whatever. So I'm going to put this inside of my envelope. I'm just going to group down my words plus my paper, and that's in its own little folder. Just name it note. By now you know I don't work with my original, so I'm going to duplicate it, take my original to the back, and flatten down this whole little note. I need to put it behind these flaps. So you can see it just needs to go right there in front of this section called top flap, and then it should be good to go. The shadow is already on it because of the shadows we created with our flaps, and you can move it around to make it like a little skewed or however you want it to look in your piece. Just make sure it doesn't like come out like this, because it's like really obvious that it's not in the envelope. So I'm going to do something that shows a little bit of the writing without looking like it was too planned to look perfect. So something like that I think is good. You can even make it a little smaller if you need to, because I want a little bit of that top flap to show. Okay, so I think that looks really cute, and it looks pretty realistic as far as like the shadows casting onto the note and everything. So now I'd like to add some fun other items like little paper clips. I might put a little flower like bouquet in the background. That's just kind of like flat and as part of the background. But first I'd like to add some little paper clips. So you can get free images like this from websites like Pexels. It's pexels.com. I'll put a link in the description as well. But I just typed in paperclip and you can see there's like free downloads, and these are paper clips you could work with if you want to add them to your artwork. I think I'll probably draw mine in, but I'll just show you real quick how I would go about deleting the background on one of these to add it to my work. So let's see, trying to find one that's like a full paper clip. This looks cute, but I don't know if it has enough quality to do it. We can try it. So I'm going to try to use like one of these where it's like the full paper clip is shown. So I'm just going to push download, and then you can follow this person that created this, and sometimes you need to credit them, other times you don't need to. So here's the credit. You can just push copy, and that should have gone into my downloads folder. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to send it to Procreate, just using that share button, and then push Procreate, and it goes in Procreate as a new project. You could see when I opened Procreate the next time, it said importing, but it's out here in your gallery. There it is. So it's not bad. It could be clearer, but it saves you from having to draw your paperclip in. I don't really mind doing that, but in this case, we can use this one. And I'm just going to copy that. Go back to my canvas here and just paste it in a new layer all the way at the top. Okay, so there's my little paper clip. Now let's just zoom in a little bit so we can work with it. So you need to grab your select tool, push automatic, and then just tap on some of the area you'd like to delete, and you can slide it to capture more or less of the area here. Just make sure it doesn't go into your paper clip. So that looks pretty good. And let's just catch some of it in here, and then we'll go in and clean it up a little. You want it to retain some of the shadow. You can always add a little bit more, but you don't want to accidentally delete into the actual clip or too much, select too much out of there. Oops. Okay, let's try that, and then I'll just go in and clean it up with my eraser tool on the monoline brush. And when you're using the select tool, you can also feather it a little bit. So you could push like 1% feathering, and it'll soften up these edges when it cuts out the selection. It's a little softer than these like jaggedy pixels. This is like a really little clip, so it's not that hard to like erase out what you don't want. You can always draw your clip in and just add shadows and highlights with the airbrushing tool in the Procreate library. There's like a soft airbrush, and that will give you a little bit of like that shine to make it look like it's a metal object. We'll do one of those too, just so you can see both ways. Okay, that looks pretty good. You can really just keep going with this if you want to clean it up. Really good, but for this demonstration, that's good enough. And then of course you would want to delete out all that extra stuff there. So I just select my little paper clip, press invert. It's going to capture all that extra junk around the edges, and then just cut it. So let's see where to place it. If it's actually clipping something down like this, you'll have to erase part of the clip out to make it look like it's really behind the object. So if you had your note clipped to your envelope, you would erase out a section so that it looks like it's actually like gripping it. If you just want to put some loose on the side, that could be cute too. You won't really be able to enlarge this one without it getting blurry, but it actually looks like an appropriate size for this envelope. So in the end, we chose a good image from that library. So maybe like that, and we'll just make a few duplicates. And then you could put little shadows behind them. Just kind of merge it down and then duplicate the layer and fill it with black. Oops, fill a clipping layer above the duplicate with black. Okay, clip that down and then just merge it down, and that gives me these black paper clips. There's other ways to do this, that's just my method. And then you go to the Gaussian blur, click on layer, and you only need to blur it a tiny bit because these are really little objects. If you put too much, it starts to not look realistic at all. Like that's like floating off of the table or whatever, which makes no sense. So it only needs like a little bit of blur. So like I'd say less than 3%, and then just nudge it down a little. You kind of can look to see like which way you think your shadow is going to cast and just be consistent throughout the rest of your drawing. I tend to always like nudge it down and to the left, so I'm just going to go with that. And if it's too dark, you can also click on the N or click on the layer and then just turn it down a little bit on the opacity slider until it looks like something that's reasonable and like realistic. So that's how you would add little fake paper clips. You can also draw them in if you grab like a goldish color. I'm using this goldish color here. If you want to type it in your like hexadecimal code here in the color palette, it's C0925D. And it gives you like this goldish color. And then you can simply just like draw the shape of a paper clip. So I'm going to trace this one just because I have it here and it's easy to see, but it just loops around like that. I mean, that looks like totally wonky. The lines aren't straight, but that's okay. So I'm going to work with that one. I'm going to hide the real one and work with this one just to show you how you would add a little bit of like shadow and light. So we will go ahead and make a layer on top, make it a clipping mask, and then you can go in here to this airbrushing section right here and grab one of these soft brushes and try this like soft airbrush and just turn it down like really little, and then you'll need to grab a lighter color and a darker color. So my lighter color, I'm going to use this light yellow and it's FEE0A3, and you just kind of like brush in some highlights. So again, looking to see like which way my shadow is going to be. The light's coming from here, the shadow is going to be down here. So we're going to make our light on the right hand side towards the top. Now this paper clip looks like it's been through the ringer. It's like really wiggly and bendy, but you could draw it smoother. This is just to show you how to add the light. Ignore like the wiggly paper clip. So the light's going to be on this top part on the right, and then here. And the airbrush makes it really easy to add these little highlights. You can do a few areas that are even a little bit brighter and press a little harder to get like those little shines. That helps it look more realistic too. Besides the wonkiness of the paper clip's shape, I think that's pretty good for the highlights. And then the shadow, just grab a color that's a little darker. Let's see if this one works. In case you're interested, it's A0815C. And then we'll just add some little like darker areas opposing the highlights, and that makes it look three-dimensional. I feel like a little bit goes a long way with this kind of thing. You can always add more if you zoom out and it needs it, but you don't really need to go to like extremes with adding the shadows and highlights. So that looks pretty good. If you're happy with your highlights and your shadows, you could snap it down. I'm going to do that because I'm probably not going to keep this paperclip anyway. But if you did not want to do that, you could just group it up and then duplicate this layer that's just the flat paperclip, and you're going to make your shadow using that one. I'm just going to go ahead and clip mine down, duplicate it, and then recolor the duplicate so that it's black. I like to make a layer on top and grab black, drop it in, clip it down, and then merge. And now I have a metal paperclip and then the black silhouette for the shadow. And then just go to Gaussian blur, magic wand, Gaussian blur, layer, and then just slide it up a tiny bit. It really only needs like 1% or something, maybe slightly more, 1.5, and then just nudge it down. That's way too dark. So we can go up here and just turn that down a little bit. And it might even be too much blur. You really only need a teeny tiny bit of blur. And the further the distance is from the clip, the more raised off the table it looks. And so you can like rotate it a little bit or distort it a little bit to get it to look the way you like. I'm just going to rotate mine just like a smidge. And that's not bad. But last I'd like to add some confetti. So I want to make the like little hearts, like gold confetti sprinkled on the table. So let's do that. Make a new layer all the way in the top, and you could draw in your hearts or use a stamp brush. And I happen to have a stamp brush that I'll share with you in the freebies section of my website. Rotate it a little, and I'm just going to duplicate it a bunch of times to make it look like it's sprinkled confetti on the table. Okay, and then I'm going to put a layer over top of this to make it look like gold shiny foil. You can get the gold foil in the Metallics Toolkit in my Etsy shop, and it'll help you create all kinds of different metallic textures. I have one that I already created that is gold, and I exported it, so I'm just going to go ahead and insert it over top of my hearts so that it gives them a little bit of like shininess. Okay, I think that looks super cute. They need a little shadow since it's confetti. So I'll just duplicate it. It's already black, so that makes life easy. Just select the bottommost layer, add the Gaussian blur, and just a little bit. And these are more like three-dimensional elements that could be a little bit further off the table, so you can make your blur a little bigger. And then I'll just nudge it down and to the right. And we need a blur behind our envelope. So let's see. We're going to need it behind the envelope triangle in the base. So I'm going to duplicate my base and duplicate my top flap and take both of those duplicates and merge those together, and then just recolor it black. Okay, it needs to be all the way in the back. Okay, there we go. Recolor it black, and then add the Gaussian blur. Just scooch it down a little bit. And if it's too dark, you could just turn down the opacity a little bit. And my note needs a little blur too. So just duplicate your note, put it behind your original, recolor it so it's black, and then add the Gaussian blur, just a little bit. And then you can really just nudge that down a little bit. And if you want it to look like it's more curled off of the table, you can grab this liquify and use push and just kind of like push it a little bit so that it looks like it's further away from the table. And then just make that a little bit less dark. And there's our love note. So I think that came out really cute. You could send this as a digital card to somebody, or if you wanted to just print out the envelope and the note on an actual card, that could be really sweet too. I was thinking to add some like flowers in the background here, but I actually don't think it needs it in the end because of the gold little heart confetti. So I really am happy with how this came out. And of course you can customize it to say whatever you wish, whether you're making this for a friend or a loved one or whatever. So I think that this was a fun little project that we could use again for another holiday. If you make this project, I'd love to see what you created. Be sure to tag me if you post your work on Instagram. You can find me at MyMcDoodles and hashtag it MyMcDoodles so I can see your work and share it in my stories. If you like this video, then be sure to give it a like and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next fun tutorial. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.